Welcome, everybody, to our brand new Coach Unboxed podcast. This is a project by Unbox Sports, a new agency elevating professional tour tennis coaches on and off the court. I'm Yannick Yoshizawa, and today I'm joined by one of my co-founders, Flavia Araujo. As a first episode, we felt it was important to give a little bit more context about what we do behind the scenes and what we're striving to accomplish. So I hope you enjoy it and continue to follow the stories of us unboxing our tour coaches. Hello.
Hello, we're here.
We're here. I never thought I actually was going to be speaking on a microphone like this in my life. I always thought it was cool, but I'm sure you've
Looks
done this
good.
before.
Not with that setup, no. Maybe with the headphones, but not the mic.
Glad that we're doing this, and I think it's so incredible that we've met so many years ago. I'm a little bit older, I have to say, but tennis has brought us to where we are today. And yeah, I mean, I can't remember. Like you're what year were you born?
92.
92. Okay, so 2 years apart. So growing up in Brazil, right?
Yeah,
You grew up in São Paulo as well?
yeah, in the big city.
The big city, yes. And I think you took a little bit more of the professional route than I did. But yeah, Fly, remind me again, you came to college, played, and then,
And
but after your pro career, right?
yeah, I had a little bit of a different path, I'd say. I started tennis later than most people. I was 11 when I started hitting around and started really practicing when I was 13, 14 when I played my first tournament into already in the 16s as all. But it moved quite fast now. It started with the city tournaments, state, went international and international. And then I found myself senior year of high school playing futures and challengers, which, 4 years before that, like what? I could never picture that. But I was very happy about my development. And because everything happened so fast, I wanted to give myself a chance to just see how it was to be in the professional world and meeting the generation before me, a lot of the girls that were incredible players in Brazil for a long time in my career. I didn't get to play them because I was still developing. So when I got to
Yeah.
a level in which I could finally play on the same court with them, play with some of my Brazilian idols, I was like, hey, let's play a couple of years, see how it goes, just have that experience. And I was very fortunate to meet a lot of cool people around that time. Had a great time in the futures and the challengers. 2 years after, I decided to go to college. I had some good opportunities, so I came to the States. I went to the University of Arkansas, played my 4 seasons in there, and after I graduated and all, I did my MBA and ended up staying.
That's awesome. Well, I guess we shared a lot of that pathway of me a little bit. I never really went to that pro part, but growing up playing Brazil and then playing the good college tennis, that it was great. The resources, you actually have a coach the whole time, and then being able to stay as international students, it's always great. The part that I loved, reconnecting with you was where you went after your tennis career, which was amazing. And the project, and to give a little bit of context here for everyone who is listening about Unbox Sports, it was so fascinating where it started literally me going to Wim Fissat, who at that time was just transitioning from coaching to Naomi Osaka. And it was just me coming to him and say, hey,
Yeah.
do you have an agent? Like, why do coaches don't have more sponsorships, more visibility, and so forth? And he asked me the same question. And then I think as we went through it, it was literally a question of like, hey, let's try to do this together. Let me try to be your agent. And as we were developing the brand and whatnot, we just got reconnected at the French Open. which was from, I guess, pure coincidence, but maybe it was a sign.
Yeah, I know, but you've known him for a long time though, at that point, right?
Yeah, well, I've known Wim for I don't know, 7, 8 years. I've met him when I was at the WTA, working as a player relations and as a supervisor. So we've developed a relationship, and just how I had developed with so many coaches and seeing them on the tour life. I think a lot of people see the players traveling, the glamorous part of it, which a lot of times it's actually not. But I saw actually the coaches, and actually the coaches were the ones who I interacted with the most, because they're the ones
Mm-hmm.
looking after their schedule, looking after their preparation and practice and training and so forth, right? So, yeah,
Yeah.
it was great developing the relationship.
Yeah, and I know that back to how we reconnected, I'd say we do share a lot of similarities as well as far as where we spent some of our important tennis years, which was with Carlos Kirmair at his training center in Serra Negra. And we did not live there around the same time, right? But we've known of each other because of the family and a lot of the players that got through to practice there and lived there and whatnot. So I think when we reconnected, it was a little bit of getting the band back together in a way, even though we haven't spent much time together, because it was such an important time. And obviously, the family means a lot to us. We respect the sport a lot. So I think a lot of times when we live in another country, like we're now in the United States, when we do get the chance to see each other again, it feels like a reunion.
Right.
It feels like connecting with old friends. And yeah, always very special.
Yeah, I mean, and also one of our other co-founders, Duda, how we call, but Maria Hayes, she also went through
Yeah.
Kirmair, through the same tennis academy, and it just fit so well with what we're now doing with Unbox Sports. But when I was speaking to him, it was very clear on the three things that we needed to do, from bringing the right people. One, that people who have the passion and saw the value of coaches. Wim saw, of course, from his career of being 20 plus years at the tour, and then I saw it when I worked at a tech startup trying to bring more value to our product at that point, but also when I spent at the WTA. And I had a great friend who also was big on bringing that storytelling from the coaches, because he spent time at the NFL. He's a huge sports fan, so he saw the NBA, the MLB, all the other sports. They were bringing the coaches to talk about in the
Yeah.
press conference, the strategy. So reconnecting with you, and I saw, I was like, okay, in the 21st century, we need to look good, right? And then when I saw what you did, maybe share a little bit more also what you did in the past. But for me, it was a no-brainer, because the storytelling is so important, and these coaches have so much stories. But you can have so much stories, but if you don't know how to tell it, then it gets tricky, right?
Yeah, I think it was the perfect timing when we saw each other. We were connected last year at the French Open. I was in the middle of a sabbatical with my husband. Growing up as athletes, you know how it goes. We barely have time as, kids and teenagers and young adults to go and have fun, explore, do things that you can be flexible with your schedule. So when we saw the opportunity, we took it and took a year off, and that's when we got to reconnect. And I told you what I've been through, right? That at that time, I just decided to take a break. After the MBA, I dove straight into business. I had a really cool opportunity actually to work with a local agency at the point in Arkansas, but that belonged to this big network, this global network. And with that, we got exposure to this massive accounts. And I was very lucky to get initially paired up with the Walmart account. So I worked with the international team and learned a lot about communications, and not just how they portray their stories outside, but within Walmart, how they talk to each other, how they show each other's work, and the storytelling is in every aspect of a company. And I think after 3 good years with the Walmart account, I moved to California. And then with that, I stayed with the company, but now with a different account. I started working with Nike. And it was a bit of a reunion for me as well because I was an intern at Nike when I was in college back at Arkansas. And I found myself working on projects with former interns, friends of mine. I worked at the tennis team at Nike at that point in my internship. So, yeah, I got to see tennis from the playing side. I did a little bit of coaching in my free time, so experienced some of that. And then the business side from the brand and see how a brand operates, works with the athletes. I got to work with some of the agents as well, the teams, and just the story. At Nike, I learned so much about the content calendar and how they plan so many years in advance, the product, the relationship with
It's
the
crazy, right?
players.
It's I mean, you and you see, everyone sees it. I saw all the commercials that Nike produces and sends it out, and it feels so organic, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
they just thought about but because talk a little bit of, because the part where Nike, they plan so much in advance, but you cannot predict what's going to happen tomorrow
yeah,
or the day
correct.
after tomorrow. So you need to also be so quick and tell that story right away, right? So how do you prepare and are able? So I'm assuming that, like, whenever one of their athletes or one of their coaches, one of their teams is ready to accomplish something so big, there's all this whole thing that is prepared in advance. But what if it doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's about having a lot of plans in the back, in your back pocket, and just be ready to, go with the one that makes most sense at the time. A lot of what we did today with Unbox, we can plan as much as we want, but the market and the tennis industry is so dynamic, right? It's the teams, the change, it's the tournaments, the big stories that come up, and at Nike, that it's at the macro and the micro level as well. So we will make the plans thinking about, okay, is this an Olympic year? Let's put the Nike filter. Let's put the Nike court, which is Nike tennis filter. And then you're also trying to tell the story of the athlete. What makes sense to them? What's important to them? How do they see things? So yeah, you do a lot of planning and you plan the stories based on the products and use the products and communications to bring those stories to life. But yeah, something happens. It could be an injury. It could be a tournament that maybe one of the athletes that not constantly in the spotlight goes and takes off and they actually become the story. So yeah, constantly adapting, but it was a great time. I learned a lot. When I was in the agency side of things, I started working more on experiential marketing and helping put events together, tell the stories more from the event perspective. And yeah, lots of learning, incredible people I've met. But what really
Yeah.
stuck with me is that when I decided to take this time off with my husband and take the break from work, going into the sabbatical, what we ended up doing is that we traveled the world and went to a lot of tournaments. It's because,
You couldn't get
you
away.
know, couldn't get away. And I've been in a way away for a little bit because, many of my friends that I made during those 2 years playing futures and challengers, they stuck with it for the next, 8, 10 years. And now they're the ones playing the Grand Slams. Now they are the
Yeah.
ones on tour. So for me, it's fun now because before I was a fan and then I was a player and then I was on the business side and
Yeah.
then I started seeing the tour through their eyes. And that's when we reconnected at the French Open. And, as I was watching some of my friends as well and got to know their teams, got to know their coaches, and you learn a lot. You hear stories, you actually see the real, and
So did you, talking about this part, like when I came and told you this idea that we were doing it, did it click right away? Someone who could have done it before, right? Like, so,
sure.
um, I guess, did it click it, or did it take some convincing? Did you go and speak to some of your friends and their coaches and you're like, yeah, it's great? Or you're like, no, you're crazy? And I guess, yeah, maybe tell a little bit of like what, because I guess I never asked you these questions, like, why did you decide? Like, you've had such a great
Yeah.
background. You could have just gone and worked at an agency or at a brand, just continue to develop that career. So why this crazy idea to join Unbox Sports, and something that like no one has done it before in a way, and it was there. It has been there for a while, right?
Yeah, I think it was the perfect storm. A couple of things come to mind because obviously we've been following each other's careers, maybe not in details, but I've seen what you've been up to. I studied entrepreneurship in my MBA. I had a startup then as well. And at that time, you were diving into the whole startup world. So for me to see someone that grew up like me, we have a lot of the same network, a lot of the things that we enjoy, and you were taking on the startup world. You were an entrepreneur. And for me, it was just fascinating. And the other side of it is that the sabbatical was exactly for us to reconnect with our core, reconnect with our passions, figure out how to continue to do life. We wanted to go back to work in a way that we felt we could make an impact. We could bring positive things and do something that we were passionate about, right? So when we talked, it was this thing of, okay, I want to go back to work and work with something that I love, which is tennis. I'm taking time off and I'm at a tennis tournament right now. For me, it's clear that that's where I want to be. That's the subject that I love, the product that I consume. It's what I read in my free time.
Yeah.
And naturally, there was an interest, right? So when you started talking about it, you at the time you were not talking about Unbox, but we did talk about coaches. We did talk about
Yeah.
the experiences on tour. So yeah, I went on, continued with my sabbatical, and for another few months, and then I think in January we talked and
Yeah.
like, hey, this is actually happening. This is starting, and I would love to hear if you're interested in the team. And for me, it's like, yeah, for sure, entrepreneurship, doing something that can create really positive impact in the industry that we both love. Had the opportunity to learn from professionals that I look up to, spend more time with the people that I grew up with, and see what happens. It's a lot of learning for sure. It's not just bringing experiences, and I think for you as well, right? It's not just like you've done all of this, so yeah, absolutely. It's right in front of you. Let's just do it. I think we both understood from the beginning that, hey, this is something new. This is something that
Yeah.
hasn't really been done before. And are we willing to be partners? Are we really into the mission and willing to take on the challenges, and everything is going to change as we go? Are we comfortable with that
Yeah.
idea? We're like, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great point, and talking a little bit about bringing you into the team, and then the other part that I knew that had to happen from an agency perspective, dealing with so many contracts, we needed to have a lawyer. And bringing Maria was crucial at that point that we were, and I'm
Yeah,
sure it
she's
saved
great.
us a lot of money because I know the legal fees are not cheap out there. So yeah, then she's been great. The support that she's been able to give to a lot of the coaches so far, and starting it literally December last year with just a plan and say, hey, let's try this win. And it was so fascinating because within 2 months, and of course we have to put it a little bit, and we'll bring Win to tell a little bit of more of his history, but it was just so fascinating to me to look at Win's resume. 6 Grand Slams, coached so many top five
So many.
players, and you're wondering like, how can this guy not just be more exposed, be talking about in press conferences, giving clinics, sharing his knowledge. I was just fascinated, and then talking and telling his story to different brands, got so many brands saying, oh, I never thought about this. And
Right,
it's so interesting when you hear that, and you see actually that undervalue of the coaches are not because they're undervalued, it's just because they have to do their job on court making players better, and there's no one telling their story, because if there was someone, the value is there, right? So that was
right.
just fascinating. I came with this mindset of, hey, coaches needed more exposure. They are going to get more sponsorship. And then in Indian Wells in Miami, which was, let's say, our first official trip to, start telling the other coaches and hearing the feedback, I was just mind blown about their feedback of a lot of these great coaches who have been on the tour for so many years, that the whole profession could be better, from so many points of media exposure, content creation, sponsorship opportunities, event opportunities, and just contracts also, with players. Just being there and making the whole industry more professional. And then that was something that really clicked for me. And it was like, hey, we're not just trying to elevate the tennis coaches, but we're trying to make the whole tennis industry better, because the more professional the industry becomes with the tennis coaches, you will have better tennis coaches, which
Yeah.
consequently you will have better tennis players, which consequently you will have better tennis, period.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I
that was just,
remember I remember you coming from Indian Wells, right? 'Cause you went and you did a lot of this consumer research in a way, this customer research. And for me, when I met with you at Miami, and we also sat down with Wim and do the to hear about your findings and then continue to validate that in Miami and already see interest and people noticing what we were doing with little effort at that point. We haven't really done anything on social. We haven't really put ourselves out there, but it's something important for them and they talk and the word started spreading a little bit. So it was easy to see the need and how interested they were, which I think for us sitting down and going through our decks and going through how we will position ourselves, what we need to actually be doing. I think it was a light bulb moment and we saw so much opportunity, but it also gave us the chance to, hey, what can we actually put into action? What are the steps here? Yes, we got to have this long-term vision, but also we need to start executing somehow, right? So I think it
yeah.
was a very important week for us, actually.
Yeah, no, it was an important week. And as we talked more and more, you saw the interest and the light bulb, not only from the coaches, but from the different organization bodies that exist in tennis. But it's just so fragmented that it was very hard for any of them to put focus into the coaches, and see this holistic value that they could bring. And I think that's when we saw even a bigger opportunity.
Right.
And I think when we came in, right, like Wim was great, and then we started adding other coaches, but we were trying to be very selective in a way that, okay, who do I have relationship, who can we trust in the beginning, right? Because it's so delicate that you want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And having Tom Hill, who, I mean, he's, I think, 5 years younger than me, but I remember being on the tour, which it was 5 years ago, and I don't know, he was like 24, 25, and he was already coaching, Daniel Collins, Maria Sakkari, to such a high level. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy has such a incredible uh, coaching skills. And as a 28, 29-year old, you already coach someone all the way to the top three. You're
Yeah.
like, this has to be out there, right? We have to talk about it. And bringing Sandra, Benny, it was just, and then you start hearing it, all this different great feedback, right? And then we knew that we had to execute better and more
Yeah.
activations, right? And I think
Yeah.
what you thought and what was created at the US Open, I think it just took to another level of the light bulb. The light bulb went from like that stingy yellow to like bright yellow of like bing bing bing, like
Yeah. Yeah. It was a process, right? From where we were in Miami into actually doing an official launch at the US Open. And the stories that we were able to tell at the US Open, they were only possible because this amazing first cohort of coaches that we got in, and they trusted us. They trusted the relationship initially that they had with you and knowing you from the tour, but also then I got the chance to talk to them and talk about their story. And Maria and Wim also being there to support in any way possible. I think it was really cool and fulfilling as well to see their feedback and to have them come to us and say like, hey, I never really had this kind of conversations before. This was really cool to do. Or I feel protected, I feel safe, I feel like I have a better chance, and I feel like I can actually focus on my job now because there's someone out there that is thinking about everything else for me. But at the same time, we are a mighty team at that point. We're starting from
You
nothing
still are a
into,
mighty team.
yeah, still are a mighty team. We still are. And at that point, we are going through such a learning experience that we cannot even position us as, hey, we're this full service agency and we're going to do everything for you. No, it's such a collaborative process with the coaches. We can only exist if we get to learn from them and be close to them to understand their stories. And the coaches also trusting us has been really special because they understand that we're doing something that's never really been done before. We cannot service in every facet of this big, agencies that have been out there for so long. So the collaboration between us and the coaches to see, hey, these are the parts that make most sense for us to partner. These are the things that we can help you with. These are the things that, you continue to push for yourself. We can tell so many stories and whatnot, but they still have to go out there and, do a good job, have cultivate really good relationships and be the best coach that they can be. Where we come in is, hey, let's talk and see all the areas that from the team that we have and the experiences we have, what can we do to allow you to focus on coaching while we elevate your story, because it's not about one coach. This is not about, the work that we do just with Tom or with Sandra or with Benny or with Wim. This is a matter of, hey, we help one and we help two and we continue to do that. We're elevating the collective. One thing that they bought into is that it's not about their own as their individually, but for them, the importance of being part of what we're doing is they're also contributing to us elevating the collective of coaches, which I think it
Yeah.
was so key. It's going to really set the tone moving forward for what we do. Yes, we'll do some work here and there with the coaches and do programs and activations. The US Open was a really good event for us to position that to the coaches. But the understanding
Yeah.
from all the coaches that they're all into something bigger. We're doing this for something bigger. It's been a huge time investment for us this year getting all set up. But I don't think at any point we regret it because we're in it for the mission, we're in it for them, we're in it because it really mattered to us. We have a strong history and our own stories with the sport, and we just want
Yeah,
tennis
and,
to
and I,
continue
I
to grow,
think
right?
this is, yeah, it's we're doing for the coaches, but I think it's much bigger that we're doing for the sport of tennis,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
we, again, the coach is just an avenue for better tennis. At the end of the day, that's why coaches exist, right? It's to develop, it's to lead and develop athletes or whatever that is, right? It can be athletes, it can be personality. There's so many different types of coaches out there. We're not only talking about the actual technical. We had fitness coaches already, interested. We had physios.
Yeah,
Everyone takes such a great part into the development of the number one player, number 10, number 50, number 100, which is a huge accomplishment. Uh, and more than anything, I think today, and when I sit down with all the coaches, they just tell such great, funny stories that like I've never heard. Like, it's
yeah,
that behind the scenes that they bring to the value of, like, that's what people want to hear.
yeah.
It's
And even
hey,
even stories that we've heard from, journalists or the players themselves, but we never heard that story from the point of view of the coach. So we've
Yeah,
been through a couple of situations like, oh, I remember that time. But wait, that's what happened? Like on your side, that's how you played a role in all of this? That's amazing. It has to be out
yeah.
there.
And the player is so focused on performing, right? And the spotlight it is there. But when you bring someone to, hey, yeah, but for the player to be on that spotlight, performing the way that they are, look at what's happening all behind the scenes, right? Like I've heard coaches saying, "Oh yeah, like in the final of a Grand Slam, I was running around looking for this specific type of food, and I had to bring it up." All of these things that like people don't realize, and it just makes it more human, right? It makes it
Yeah,
just more, it normalizes because you
sure.
see these players performing at such a high level, and you're like, oh my gosh, you'll never be able to get there, or like, how can I even relate? And then you hear that story from these coaches, they're like, oh, that's funny. That's, I've been there, all these different
Yeah,
things. So like getting to that point at the US Open and just hearing these tons of stories. And I think it was one of the reasons why we decided to start this, right? Because let's give a microphone, let's give a spotlight to these coaches and bring them on, and let's just have them tell these great stories like Claudio
yeah,
Pistolazzi, which was, he's just funny himself, like telling all these jokes. But like Carlos Kimari with when he was with Sabatini, I mean Kamal when he was with Sloan, like all these coaches that are bringing their stories is just fantastic. And
yeah,
just let's just give them a microphone and let them tell the
yeah.
stories to the public.
Yeah, like you said, at the end of the day, they're all humans. They're all trying to do the best they can. They're all doing their job. The player, the coaches, everyone involved in making the tour successful. And it's easy to look from the social media or just media point of view in which you're, as a fan, consuming a product and start developing some personal expectations, or you're cheering really hard for someone and whatnot. And sometimes it's not easy to see the real stories through a couple of posts. And the goal here is that by exposing some of the stories or letting the coaches share, always respecting the players, they are working together. It's more about remembering that they're people and it's their careers. Some of them have families to think of.
Yeah,
They spend a whole lot of time traveling, like 40 weeks sometimes plus, away from their home, away from their family, trying to help a player make their dreams come true and fulfill their own dreams as well. So, yeah, this process we've known of players and coaches and how some of this goes, but just the process of telling the story and at the US Open, being able to connect with them as well has been really exciting and really humbling. And especially when some of the coaches came to our event and said, like, hey, finally something for us. Like, I never get invited to anything. Or you saw a coach asking to take a picture with another coach because now is the first downtime that they have to
yeah,
just connect as people and relate and share struggles, share stories, establish a relationship. At the tournaments, they're constantly with their teams and so much going on
yeah,
between practice, warm ups, match, the stress of it all, and for them to have the time
yeah.
to just be themselves. And I think they really appreciated that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and one last thing that I want to talk about the U.S. Open as well, just coaches with coaches, that ability to connect, but also the event that we did with Morgan Stanley, and a big shout out to Kevin here who helped us out. But it was just
Amazing.
so fascinating to see, we had like 30, 40 people who love tennis or fascinated by tennis, and they were put into a spot of being coached by Wim, by David, who was coaching, he's coaching Tiafo, Sandra coaching Marta, Koschuk, and their eyes were just like, oh my gosh, I'm being coached by one of the best coaches currently on tour. And you start connecting, and it's like, imagine you having the coach of the New England Patriots or the the Kansas Chiefs or the Liverpools, of all these amazing coaches, and the accessibility that you bring in. And again, just the story, and then you get to hang out with them, you get to, like, hear their stories. It was just fascinating, right? And I think that just
Yeah.
took us to another level. Like, hey, we need to tell that story, we need to give them more accessibility, because yes, they have this huge focus on making their athletes better, but they can also share their knowledge to the world. So there's more people playing tennis, there's more participants, there's more of everything, right? It's more, more, more. And how do we get there, right? And I think that's where
Yeah.
I see that we're really going, giving them more exposure, it's professionalizing their careers, because that will just be better for the sport from a professional perspective, from a development perspective, from an adult, from a participation. There's all these great abilities to expand and grow the sport, right? So yeah, I'm just so, like, grateful to be where we are, and have
Yeah.
this opportunity.
For sure. I think coming out of New York, with the excitement and with the validation also comes responsibility, right? Now we left New York saying, hey, now we introduced ourselves, they understand the project, they understand what we would like to do. Now, how can we continue to do this at a high level, expand, establish more connections? So yeah, this past few months after New York have been very special in a lot of ways. With navigating a lot of maybe little tweaks here and there about our strategy, or what is the best channel, avenue, pathway for us to continue to do this as a team. Do we need to expand the team? Should we keep going as we are? I think as a business, we also get to learn a lot about what are the right ways to go about it. And between us, like you and I, who are more into the daily operations, and I have seen more of that part of the work, we get to challenge each other a lot, right? Which I love. Like you have your experiences, I have my experiences, we have our point of views, and I love the respect that we have between each other, not just because of our past, but who we are as people and whatnot. And it's been really good balance because we're constantly challenging each other, but keeping that filter and that the focus on elevating coaches always takes
Yeah.
us to making really good decisions, and bringing the coaches in along the way. It's been massive for us.
Yeah, and just bringing coaches together, like, just the more that I speak to coaches, and we continue to grow this community, I hear more and more, like, coaches talking to each other, right? Because they want to hear their thoughts, they want to hear what each one have been doing it, because, and that's what, I mean, the more, just like what you said, between the two of us, when coaches talk and they agree, they disagree, they make them as coaches better as well, right? And I think
Yeah.
one of these parts that we're maybe not intentionally doing, but it is happening, is this camaraderie among coaches, that at the end of the day, they're listening to one coach, and they're not going to say, like, what's their strategy, and so forth, but, like,
True.
hey, how can you be a better coach? And, like, that will just give general perspective for the younger coaches coming up, the coaches who have been on tour and always learning. That's definitely something that we strive. But, definitely our focus, let's help them with contracts, so they can focus on their job. Let's help them create content and let their voices out, mic them up, put them in front of the camera, so that just gives people to hear their stories, as well
Yeah.
as, journalists and more articles out there about coaching. And as well as, hey, there's a huge opportunity here for sponsors to connect with this one before we even get to exposure their knowledge. There's so many high performance products out there that can get a huge value from this coach's perspective and making their products better. Because I'll tell you, if they're trying to get a player, that will cost them a lot more currently
Yeah.
than, bringing a coach and bringing this such a detail, because they're so used to giving feedback to their players. But now, if they can give feedback directly to the company, that's a huge plus. And now we're
Hmm.
starting to hear, like, a shout out to a lot of the products that was given to our during our event in the US Open, because they're starting to understand of how valuable they can be to make their product better. And then
Yeah,
of course exposure.
we have more than 15 brands, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, the last to me is just exposure. I mean, now that coaching is finally allowed after some amount of years that I don't even want to say here, but like that just makes the sport better, and coaching, and everyone used to coach for the past 40 years. And, poor chair umpires had to just find the players for that. But now, the players are just getting better because there's just part of it. So yeah, the exposure that they're getting, more TV time, more overall, and now you're starting to see just the brands being able to be part of it. So yeah, I'm very excited for the future that is coming for sure.
Yeah, I agree. We continue, we've been very, very lucky to, after the US Open and further sharing what we're doing on social media and LinkedIn, coaches started to reach out, right? It's been very, very organic, a lot of word of mouth. Some of our coaches going through this experience and telling some of their fellow coaches about what's been happening. I love that also with everything that we're doing. I think what differentiates us is that we're not one coach's agent necessarily. We are this we're this cohort of coaches that is elevating coaches on the tour and beyond, just in sport in general. So that's been key with our projects and our reaching out as well, because now coaches understand, like, it's not like I'm gonna have this person that's gonna cover everything about my life, like usually goes with the player side, but they're saying, hey, these are the specific things that I need to be successful, and maybe I don't have access to it. It's not something that is provided on the tour, or it's just not something that is a part of my routine and profession right now. That's when we jump in and fulfilling that need or finding ways to support them. Then it also kind of clears our minds and gives us ideas on how to expand that solution to more coaches. So yes, being present, I think it will be a big thing for us. Go into as many of the tournaments as we can in the future to continue to have these conversations, continue to answer questions, find the best ways to collaborate. And yeah, in the few days that we can put an activation together, it doesn't need to be the party of the year or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's very intentional time that we're creating for them to take a step forward in their career.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's closing out here. Yeah, it is just so exciting, and I can't wait to also bring coaches here to tell their story. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, there's so many great things, from a professional to informal to jokes. What I just want to learn from them. I think
Yeah.
that's great. Which I want to. I'm going to ask the coaches this question to every single one of them, because I always think it is. But I'm going to start with you today here, and I just came up with this question now because I wanted to hear from you,
There we
because I
go.
don't even know what I would do it myself. But I think everyone is a coach in some shape or form. You can always give your opinion on something. So knowing who you are today and looking back at the young Flavia, uh, two questions into one. What advice would you give to the younger Flavia? And how old would that Flavia be when you would give this advice?
Oh, at 13, when I started practicing and I saw the commitment, I saw it was my first introduction to what it could take to take it a step forward. Before, it was me for a couple of years as an 11-year-old having fun. And at 13, I found out, hey, there are tournaments, there are this and that. But not until I actually got to pros that I had a little bit of a preview of what it actually took to make a life of the sport. So I do remember having the switch of life becoming a lot more serious. And I started putting a lot more pressure in myself and to do things right, to do it right by others, give as much as I could, because I knew there were people coming with me in my journey, and I wanted to, respect the time and effort and love that they poured towards me and my success, right? So things got a lot more serious, and it wasn't pressure from them or anything else, but it was just me pressuring myself. I wish there was someone that I
It's
would
not
look
someone,
up
it's
to.
you. It's Flavia
Well,
now.
it's what I wish I had at that time, is the opportunity to talk to someone that's way ahead and done all the things that I was about to experience, to tell me it's okay, like relax, enjoy. It's a process. There's no perfection. There is trying your best, being the best version that you can be, and committing the time and surrounding yourself with good people. I was very fortunate. Big shout out to my family for allowing me and helping me chase all of that. My parents, my sisters, my brother-in-laws, and like everybody made my life so much easier to do that. So yeah, I would give the advice of perspective and really
So
enjoying the
enjoy the
process.
process.
Enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. Don't take things too seriously. If you're a good person,
Yeah,
you're gonna do the right things, and things are gonna happen naturally. But it's not something that it's checking the boxes. And for
yeah,
us, now we're unboxing all of this,
yeah.
and for myself, I feel like I am enjoying the process. And this year has been so amazing. It's not
That's
just
awesome.
reconnecting with old friends through the company, through the tennis, being able to go back into my roots and share as much as I can, figuring out what's the best way for us to continue to grow this. And as a result, we're growing ourselves, and it's really cool to have all of this come full circle with people that I grew up with.
Yeah, no, that's also for all the 13-year-olds there, and for 13-year-old Flavia, enjoy the process out there. But yeah, well, it was awesome talking to you, Flavia.
Same.
It was just there's so many things that I didn't know about you, so having this conversation was awesome to have you, and I can't wait to disclose a lot of the things that people don't know about these coaches that we'll have it in our podcast. And so please make sure that everyone who is listening wants to hear more about the great stories that will be coming up of coaches. And also, if you don't have the patience to listen to this whole thing, we're going to be sharing a lot of the short snippets in our social media at Unbox Sports. So follow us, and can't wait to talk to more. And of course, Flavia, you'll be out there, and we'll be chatting more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure.